Hello, my name is Elsie Nisley. I'm Voter Service Chair for the League of Women Voters here in St. Louis Park. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of St. Louis Park, I would like to welcome all of you tonight, the candidates, the audience, and those viewing this forum on Civic TV, Channel 17. A reminder that tonight's forum will be rerun on Civic TV 17 until the completion of the general election on November 7th. Tonight's moderator is Janet Gendler. Janet is a member of the League of Women Voters of Minneapolis. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization which promotes political responsibility through informed and active participation in government. The League of Women Voters does not support or oppose political parties or individual candidates. The views of this forum are those of the candidates. Sponsorship of this forum by the League of Women Voters is not an endorsement of any candidate. All viable candidates have been invited. We encourage our League members, as we encourage each of you, to get involved in your community and the political party of your choice. We ask that you consider becoming a member of the League of Women Voters of St. Louis Park and help us to continue to provide the citizens of this community the opportunity to hear candidates discuss issues that are important to you. For more information about membership, please contact us at lwvmn.org and click on links to local League sites. I have to say that one of the candidates, Christine Johnson, is not able to participate this evening.
Hello and welcome. I'm Janet Gendler of the LWV of Minneapolis, and I'm the moderator for tonight's Candidates Forum for St. Louis Park School Board District 283. There are 5 candidates for the 3 four-year seats on the school board. Candidates will make opening statements in alphabetical order. Bruce Cantor, Ann Casey, Mary Tomback, Karen D. Waters. Tonight's candidate questions include written questions from our live audience. Those viewing this forum on Cable TV 17 may submit your questions via email to rdunlap@slp.org. Written questions from the League of Women Voters St. Louis Park are also included in tonight's forum. We'll be using a timekeeper so everyone has the same amount of time to respond to the questions. We'll begin with candidate opening statements. Statements will be given in alphabetical order and are limited to 2 minutes each. We'll be alternating candidates so each gets to respond first to a question. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to respond to the question. So, beginning with Bruce Cantor, your opening statement, please.
Good evening. I'm Bruce Cantor. I live in the Browndale neighborhood of St. Louis Park. I practice as a pediatrician here, St. Louis Park. I've been a resident for 18 years. I'm married to my wife, Susan. We have 2 sons, Benjamin, who's 15 and a freshman to high school, Isaac, who's 13 and a 7th grader at the middle school. I'm running for school board because I see a few changes that we should be making. I also see the good work that the school board has done. In particular, for me, one is trying to get back STEAM into the elementary schools. That's science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. We did have a STEM grant from Cargill called the Park Sci that has now run out. And so this year's science is, the way Park Sci worked is that high school science teachers would come down to elementary schools and teach science. And we don't have that this year. I'm hopeful we can get that back next year or 2. I think that's very important in the future of our world as well as presently right now. But you can't have function without form. And so I think arts is also important to what we do in the world around us to make it more beautiful. Secondly, I want to talk about the achievement gap that we see going on in St. Louis Park. It's still quite wide from what I can tell. But in addition, I think we need to offer opportunities. We need to make sure everyone reaches their potential of our higher achieving students. Whether we consider them to be average or higher average, everyone should meet their potential. That's really one of our core values that we have now in the school board strategic plan, is the intrinsic value that all of us have. Finally, I talked about the Park Side grant that we have. I think we should look at having a grant writer part-time to help us look at grants again. Although we have a levy in place, and although we get money from the state, it's still not quite enough money to meet all our needs, actually. In particular, we've had 2 grants that have been successful. The Park Sci, that was the science grant from Cargill. So is BAR, the Building Assets Reducing Risk that we have at the high school. That was a federal grant. I think we need to look at trying to get grants back into the community again, trying to expand our offerings to people. It's important that overall that when kids graduate from high school, they are going to be successful in their world. Thank you.
Thank you. Ann Casey?
Thank you. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting us and for all of you who are here in the audience tonight. My name is Ann Casey. I moved to the Elliott View neighborhood on the north side of St. Louis Park in 2008 when my children were babies. We moved here for the schools. Our first entry into the St. Louis Park schools was the big stairs up to 2- and 3-year-old preschool in Teacher Allison's class at Central Community Center, and we've been in the schools ever since. My son Aaron is now in 6th grade at the middle school, and my daughter Nina is in 4th grade at Peter Hobart. And in my day job, I work as the communications manager for a nonprofit arts organization. I've been very active in the St. Louis Park community since we got here. I've been part of the Peter Hobart PTO. I chaired the PTO at Peter Hobart. I'm part of the District Parent Advisory Council, the District Strategic Plan Committee, Health in the Park, and I'm a Children First Asset Champion. I'm running for school board because I believe in our public schools. I'm invested in our schools in St. Louis Park, and I'm ready to take on a new role, not just for my kids or for the kids in my neighborhood, but for all of our students and for our entire community. I truly believe that public schools are for everybody, and in St. Louis Park, everybody is a huge array of people. Of all ages, abilities, races, and they all deserve the best education that we can give them. And that's a huge challenge. How do we meet the challenge? We work on racial equity. We support our teachers to meet the needs of all students. We support family and community engagement. And we have healthy and safe places to do all that. It's a big job, and I'm ready for it, and I would love your vote on November 7th.
Mary Tomback?
And I would like to thank the League of Women Voters for having us tonight. I am really grateful for the opportunity to be here with my fellow candidates to give you all a chance to get to know us. My name is Mary Tomback. My husband Matt and I have lived in St. Louis Park for about 9 years. Our 2 boys went to Aquila, and they are now in 6th and 8th grades at the middle school, and our daughter is a 2nd grader at Susan Lindgren. In my professional life, I was a labor and employment attorney. That training and experience taught me how to advocate. It taught me how to wrestle with tough issues and how to work hard to find solutions. And that skill set came in pretty handy about 7 years ago when our oldest, Noah, was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when he was in kindergarten. Type 1 is a complicated, overwhelming disease that poses lots of challenges at school. And so that's when I started to get involved. I volunteered so that I could help out in Noah's classroom. And when I was there, I found out that I really liked being in that classroom. I liked being with those kids. I liked learning from the teachers. I liked getting to know everybody in the school and getting those firsthand insights into what was happening in that building. And before long, I was there not because I just wanted to help Noah. I was there because I wanted to help, period. I wanted to be in Luke's and Grace's classrooms too. I wanted to be on the PTO. I wanted to continue learning from our teachers and offering the teachers, support staff, and administration the support that they needed to do the job we were asking them to do. Before long, I took that desire to help and that interest to learn out into the community. I was the school board's appointee to the Human Rights Commission, which I later chaired. I worked at STEP and Meals on Wheels, and I took my advocacy to groups working to end youth homelessness and to support special education and people with disabilities in our community. I've been a valuable contributor to these teams that are working to help meet the needs of the people in our community, and I would like to bring that dedication to the school board. Thank you.
Thank you. And Karen Waters.
Thank you. Good evening. Yep, it's on. Good evening. It's an honor to be with all of you tonight. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this candidate forum, and thanks to all of you who are here at City Hall. I am Karen Waters, and I'm seeking re-election to the St. Louis Park School Board. It has been an honor to serve our community in this role these past few years. 4 years ago, I would not have been able to say to you that I am a white woman who has benefited greatly from white privilege and systemic racism. I participated in our district strategic planning process to ensure that racial equity and supported, not punitive, professional development for all teachers and staff would be embedded in all 4 strategies of this new plan. I made a promise to the staff that I would not expect them to go on a journey that I myself was unwilling to take. We have a moral obligation to teach all of our students that come through our doors. I'd like the opportunity to finish the work that we started in order to make real the words in our mission statement and our promise as a Children First community. Please vote for Karen Waters on November 7th.
Thank you. Now, our first question will go first to Ann Casey, and we'll follow the same order. And this first question is, what are the top 3 challenges for the St. Louis Park school system?
Thank you. I think our top 3 challenges are huge. One of them is the ability to meet the needs of all our learners. I mentioned before, everyone means a lot of different things in this community. We have over 40% students of color, almost 40% students on free and reduced lunch. We have about 10% each in gifted and talented in special ed and English language. And we have lots of kids who are in more than one of those categories. And meeting their needs is imperative, and it's really hard. How do we do that? A lot of different things. We'll probably talk some more about these tonight, but community engagement, supporting our teachers, building relationships. Secondly, the financial health of our district. State funding has been less supportive over the last few years, and we do expect that there will be budget cuts again in the next few years. We've already had one. You mentioned the Parkside program. The financial health of our district is important to our city. It's important to everyone. Finally, I think park pride. Our school district and our city are contiguous. That is an amazing opportunity. They work together, and we have common values, common mission. But if we lose our students to our competition, we have a lot of competition. We have public open enrollment, private schools, charter schools. If we lose our St. Louis Park students to that competition, we don't have the community investment that we have always had in this district. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think among the 3, the first one I would say, and this is going to sound like a broken record, especially if you've been to these before, but our achievement gap. It is stubborn and it is persistent, and we have still a lot of work to do. And it would be really easy to look at 2 or 3 or 4 days of our students' entire year and try and judge them and base their abilities on that, but we need to do better in our district. There is a lot of data that is suggesting that in the next few years we're going to see some progress with our young students, but we have lots of grades who need this attention right now. And so we need to look at this testing data as one piece of the puzzle, and we need to be going to our teachers and looking at our relationships with our students to look at these other pieces so that we can look at the big picture and figure out exactly what our students need from us so that they can succeed. 2 is inclusivity. Our district looks a lot different than it did a few years ago and a generation ago. We have, as Ann mentioned, we have students with a lot of needs, and we have a diverse population, and we need to make sure that they all feel like they belong in our schools. Third is the referendum. Our buildings are aging, and our class sizes are growing, whether this referendum passes or not. And so if it passes, we need to max out every single dollar, and we need a school board that can be good stewards of this money. And if it doesn't pass, we need a board that can create a really fantastic Plan B.
Thank you. Next, Karen Waters.
Thank you. Only 3. So for me, the number one is the achievement gap. It's why we have a school district and a public school system that needs to serve our democracy, because our way of life in our country is best served by public education and the opportunities it can afford. But it needs to serve everybody. And the achievement gap is tied to racial equity. That's another key thing that we need to continue to work on. Our demographics in our community has changed quite a bit. Our schools are ahead of our city, but if you look at the state demography changes, it's coming. And we have the students now. We need to meet the needs of the students who come through our doors. The challenge that we've always had, and every school district has, is the budget. The state funding has not kept pace with inflation, and in fact, in some administrations, active defunding of public education. So you would maybe get 4% on the formula, but then on the back end of the deal, they'd take away on transportation or free and reduced lunch to net out at 0. We had several years of 0 on the formula. I do believe our school board has been very responsible with the funds entrusted to us. That's why I continue to advocate at the state level for improved funding for all of our learners. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Bruce Cantor.
Thanks. I too probably would echo the achievement gap, but in particular, I think we need to drill down. I was at the school board meeting a week ago Monday, and I saw that 75% African Americans in 3rd grade are not at grade level in the MCA. That made my heart kind of fall. We need to find a way to get every student in our system to be at grade or above grade level, regardless of race, religion, gender identity, sexual orientation. It's important that we do that. I saw today that in Minnesota, we have more jobs openings. We actually have people here to take those jobs. That's concerning to me. Second is that referendum, and not just referendum, but there's actually 2. One is renewal of the operating levy. It's important that we have that renewal. That allows us to continue to have funds for classrooms, for teachers, for projects, for those, for the things that we need to make sure that kids are learning what they should be learning. But second is the buildings in which they learn in. And not just our kids in K through 12, but our kids who are 0 to 5 through ECFE, through the education programs, as well as our lifelong learners, whether it's adult learning, which would include us in my age group, as well as those who are older at the Lennox Community Program. It's critical that we make sure that we have lifelong learners, because you never stop learning. As a physician, I learn every day from my patients and from my colleagues how to do a better job, how to be a better physician. And for my kids, I learn how to be a better parent. And finally, for me, is making sure that we have enough money in that system to make it work, even with passing of the operating levy. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question goes first to Mary Tomback, and it is, the district has a referendum that we heard just about a minute ago. What is your position? And you have 2 minutes to answer that. So I guess fill it in is the best idea. So if the timekeepers can keep aware of that, what is your position, Mary Tomback?
In short, I support the referendum. I will leave it to our very talented and hardworking Vote Yes committee to get into the details of what the long list of things that are going to be accomplished with this money is. But suffice it to say, it is a big ask, and I do understand that, and I empathize with the people in our community who are concerned about their tax increases. As I mentioned in the last question, our buildings are not getting any older. They're not getting any younger, I should say. They're getting much older. And the needs are continuing to grow. And so we need to recognize that good schools make for good communities. And great communities foster great schools. And so we need to support and invest in our schools and in our students. In so doing, we need to be good stewards of this money. We can't take advantage of what has been given to us, and we need to use it well, every single penny. It is important that we make this investment because we need to retain our students. We need to continue to be attractive to the people, to the communities around us. We need to recruit high-quality teachers and educators who want to be in our buildings, working with our students, and be part of our community. So yes, I support the referendum.
Thank you. Karen Waters.
Thank you. I support the Vote Yes committee. We have 2 questions on the ballot. I am asking voters to, yes, please increase your taxes, and here's why. We know that good schools yield really good property values and vice versa, and our community needs that. We're an inner ring suburb. If you look at the suburbs near us who are like us, some of them have much higher tax base, and it kind of balances out. But we're contiguous. The city boundaries, the school boundaries, they're pretty similar. There is a lot of redevelopment going on in our community. It is going to bring more people into our schools, whether they're students or community members using the spaces. The first question is an operating levy. It's a revoke and replace. That's the money that pays for the teachers, it pays for books, it pays for programming. And if we don't pass it, we will look at cutting teachers and increasing class sizes. And traditionally, that is something that our community has never been in favor of. The bond is the biggest ask we've ever put forth in our community. It's $100.9 million. It's a tremendous investment in all of our buildings and all of our students. Every single building in our district will have some type of improvement. A couple that I'd like to highlight, we've been talking for almost 2 decades about improving the school lunches. Now we'll be able to do that once we pass the bond with a centralized kitchen and more from scratch cooking. Another thing that we'll be doing is creating spaces that are flexible for learning. A lot of people who went to school in our buildings, they went to school back in the day when you lined up your desk in a row and the teacher did stand and deliver type of lectures. We don't teach like that anymore. We teach in small group learning, large group learning, one-on-one or 2x2. So it's time to create flexible learning spaces. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Bruce Cantor.
So again, there are 2 levies on the ballot for on November 7th. The first is that renewal the operating levy itself for the classrooms, for our students, for materials. But the second is for the buildings. And the buildings are changing. The way in which I learned in elementary school, high school, college, medical school is different now in all aspects. We're now looking at critical thinkers, looking at collaboration, looking at problem solving. And that's what I do all day, every day as a physician. That's what most of us do all day, whether we're a parent or in the jobs that we do. We need to make sure we have those flexible spaces to ensure that every child is not just exposed, but becomes a master, actually, at those skills. It's just critical for us to do that. In addition, that kitchen is going to be wonderful. I was on the School Nutrition Advisory Committee, SNAC, what a great name. And we talked about that kitchen. It's funny because we had a kitchen in our district back in the 80s, and then we closed it and went to processed foods. And now we're looking to reopen it. I can tell you that without nutrition, you can't learn. You know, Hippocrates, who was the first physician, said, food is medicine, medicine is food, and I believe in that. Another thing is also this 21st century learning. We need to have classrooms that are interactive, not just in terms of moving students to different groups, but also technology that they use during that time. Next is what we're going to do for both our early childhood education people all the way through our seniors, making sure that they have the materials that they need, they have the teaching that they need, and that they're able to ask questions of those around them, of what would be important for them to learn about. If you've ever seen a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, they are just sponges. But if you see people who are in their 60s and 70s, I also did internal medicine, they're also sponges. Maybe in a different way, maybe learn differently, but they need those experiences, they need those openings. And finally, we need to renew our buildings. We need roofs, simple things like roofs and windows and blacktop, things that make sure our buildings don't fall in on themselves, which is starting to happen, unfortunately. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Ann Casey.
I support the referendum, both questions. Question one, I hope, is a no-brainer, our operating levy. We need money for our curriculum, for our teachers, and that does not have a tax increase associated with it. The capital referendum is a big number. It's a scary number. I wish it weren't so big, but it's necessary. Let me tell you why I think it is. As a member of the strategic plan core team, we identified 4 strategies that we're going to use in order to meet the mission of our district. Teaching and learning, systems and structures, community engagement, and number 4 is facilities. And it sometimes can feel like facilities is a thing that's over here that is kind of by itself. It would be great if we had facilities that looked like they do in suburbs that shall remain unnamed. They don't, and they won't. That's okay. What we need to do is to right-size our facilities to make them fit the other parts of our strategy in order to teach science, in order to have great lunches and have space for our kids to eat those lunches in order for our early learners to have right-sized facilities. I mentioned those big stairs at Central, trying to haul the preschoolers up the big stairs at Central. That building was built for big people, and it has little people in it now. Our superintendent has mentioned several times the sinks at Lennox, where we have our senior programs, are built for kindergartners. So we need to right-size those spaces for the uses that we're using them for. We're trying to reuse our spaces in a smart, in a strategic way. Reopening Cedar Manor, a great, smart, strategic move to reuse that space and to, as much as we can, to shepherd that money, that it's a big number, to be smart and strategic about the way that we use it, and that we build our spaces to support teaching and learning and the services that we're providing for our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question goes first to Mary Tomback, and it is, community education is one piece of the budget pie. How do you feel those dollars should be allocated? So, Mary?
Mary did lead last time.
Oh, I've been crossing off the wrong things. Okay.
Could I take this opportunity to ask you to repeat the question anyway? And Karen
Sure.
can start.
And this is from our audience. Community education is one piece of the budget pie. How do you feel those dollars should be allocated? So, Karen.
Thank you so much. Community ed is really important in our school district, and community ed is a vibrant part of many communities. I've been really honored to serve on the Community Education Advisory Council since I was named to the school board almost 4 years ago. And the program serves our earliest learners to the people who are ready to see their next horizon and everything in between. What I like about community ed is it's trying really hard to evolve and change to the needs of the community. For instance, at Lennox, there's a group of senior citizens who are very active in bringing about new programming into that space. The ECFE group has an advisory council that is looking to do additional enrichment for the programs that they offer. And I got to tell you, when my 4 kids were done with stuff, it was really nice to pass along for the ECFE garage sale the clothes and toys we outgrew. So in terms of a budget number, it's an important part of our budget. It's not the biggest part of our budget, but I do think the programming reflects the community that it serves. I think we are striving to do more to reach other people in our community who are less well-served, and I'm excited about the staffing changes that have made in order to do that. And I like how we've been doing community partnership with the Human Rights Commission to do activities in our school buildings. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Bruce Cantor.
Thank you. I think community education is a living body, believe it or not. It's always changing, it's always moving, it always needs to repurpose itself. When you look at ECFE, which is for our youngest learners and their families, what a great program. I mean, I benefit from it with having ECFE, and I benefit from it as a provider who really encourages people to do ECFE. You have parents, and they have their kids, and they learn together, and you have a parent educator with the parents, child educator with the child. What a great way to actually introduce them to the world together. When I look at that program that comes, and I get that catalog every time I look at what's in it, just the amount of things that we have and activities, whether it's sports or fitness or art or cooking or history. It's just amazing me the array of things that we have to offer to people in our district. And that's changing. The offers that we have in community education are based upon the community input. So if something is new or they want to try something new, it's a great way to do that in community education. The other thing is the Linux Senior Program. What a great program. I mean, we are lifelong learners. Every day we need to learn and allow the seniors actually to have a space for themselves as well as a space to interact with kids around them. What a great way to stay young and active in your life. Overall, I think we need to make sure we have the budget for community education. We need to make sure that we tell people that community education is not just important, we put our dollars behind it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Ann Casey.
Lifelong learning is essential to the individual's quality of life and the vitality of the community. That's one of our St. Louis Park Schools core values. Our community education program is amazing, and it has such a wide variety of things. I've gotten to be involved in vision process for both early learning and adult programs, so I've gotten to see sort of the breadth. We have everything from ECFE has been mentioned, youth enrichment for our school-age kids, adult basic education, which is so critical to our adults who are looking for English language skills or GED programs, and then adult enrichment, things like fitness classes, things like that for people like me, and our senior program, which I hope will be for people like me when I get to become a senior. It's an amazing array, and it's critical. Like I said, in our strategic plan, number 3, community engagement, community. This is a place. We have spaces for community engagement. We have 2 amazing community centers, and it's our core value. It's important to our district. We absolutely need to make it a priority. As for the portion of the pie, that's a hard decision. It's always hard to decide how to apportion those, but I would absolutely make it a priority.
Thank you. And finally, Mary Tomback. Sorry.
No problem. So Matt and I moved here from North Carolina. There was no community ed in North Carolina that was supervised by the school program, at least not in Charlotte. And when we got our first community ed catalog in the mail, we were genuinely blown away. The fact that our kids, who were 4 and 2, just 2 of them at the time, would get to go to preschool with kids in our community that was run by our schools, we just thought that was really impressive. And the senior offerings are making St. Louis Park a really great retirement option for my parents in North Carolina. It does unify us as a community. It brings us together, and it models, it makes us live that value of lifelong learning. In terms of the allocation, though, I think it's really important that we remember the research is telling us pretty clearly that early childhood education is essential. Getting kids reading and getting kids in the classroom from a young age is crucial to helping them achieve later as they move through school. As we are looking at all of our creative options holistically to figure out how we get at this achievement gap, investing in early childhood education, quality programming for the youngest members of our community is essential. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next question, and my grid is like, I don't know what happened here. Starting over again, because we have a candidate missing, this is throwing me off here. The next question is, despite the school's best effort, the achievement gap as at least, just a minute, at least as measured by standard test scores, has not budged. Is there hope? Would you like that again? Despite the best effort of the achievement gap, at least as measured by standard test scores, has not budged. Is there hope? And we start first with Bruce.
So if you remember, the achievement gap is the gap between sort of white students and minority students. And it's quite big, actually, based upon where you look at it from. And I hope, I need for it to change. I need for the achievement gap to kind of become one, basically, and not have any gap there. Every student is important. Everyone has intrinsic value according to our core values. All of us are lifelong learners. All of us have not just the responsibility to be educated, but to give back to the community itself. So we need to find a way to help our students increase their their test scores, but not just our minority students. Every student should meet their potential. If their potential is here and they're here, that's a problem. We need to be where every student's supposed to be. From my standpoint, it looks like the curriculum has been redeveloped starting in kindergarten. My understanding is that this year's third grade cohort will be under the new curriculum from kindergarten, and we'll see what the scores look like this year. But if that achievement gap's still there, we need to drill down once more into saying, what are the determinants of this gap? What is keeping people from learning? What do we need to do as a community to encourage that learning to take place? And learning to me is not just the book learning, it's also social learning. Learning how to be friends, learning how to collaborate, learning how to do critical thinking as you get older, learning how to problem solve is part of that to me. So the gap looks just at academics, but I need to look at the whole person, a holistic approach, and see what we can do to make sure that that gap narrows to almost zero. Thank you.
Thank you. Ann Casey?
Yes, there's hope. Our district is in the middle of a path on racial equity work, and we're a couple of years in. Actually, we're several years in, and you're right, it has not budged yet. But yes, there's absolutely hope. We need to ensure that we build the capacity for all teachers to believe in every student and to differentiate and teach every student. We build relationships with them and their families. We provide multiple pathways for achievement. We look not just at achievement, but at growth, so that we understand where sometimes success looks like 2 years of growth in a year rather than exactly what grade level you're at. I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. Yes. We keep our class sizes small so that our teachers have the support that they need in their classrooms. And we provide excellent professional development for our teachers so that our staff have the resources they need, the capacity, and the belief that all of their students can achieve. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mary Tomback.
So we went into a little bit of this when I talked about the challenges our district faced, but I do think that it is important to remember that when we talk about the achievement gap, we are looking at the performance on a set of days that occur over the course of an entire school year. And we really need to look to our teachers and their relationships with the students to understand exactly what their capabilities and their learning is, not just what happens on those few days. When we are building those relationships, I think that what we also need to be learning is what barriers to success are our students experiencing outside of the classroom. The housing insecurity and food insecurity, for example, are going to impede our students' success regardless of what's happening in the classroom. And so I think that we need to look at expanding our professional support staff in our buildings to be helping to connect families and students with the support that they need to be addressing those issues outside of the classroom. We need to be looking at our discipline policies and our interventions so that we are keeping our students in the classroom as much as possible. The research shows that it's best to keep them in that room and learning. And we need to try it all. We need to look at creative options. What we have been doing isn't working. As one of our school board members recently said, we need some disruptions. We need to really change the way we are thinking and what we are doing, and we need to be willing to take risks, which is another one of our attributes. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Karen Waters.
Thank you. So we've been working on this test score question for years, and the whole No Child Left Behind, and now we have ESSA, Every Student Succeeds Act, and we have the MCAs, which are one measurement, and it measures proficiency, but it doesn't measure growth. And honestly, the MCAs are skewed because we have more and more students opting out of taking them. So then you have a smaller pool of kids, and you don't have data that you can easily tease out to tell you the story of what's going on. So we need to look at other measurements of what we're doing to ensure that each child is expanding their growth, whether you're struggling to get up to grade level or if you are in the 99th percentile for the core math in third grade and need to move forward faster. We also need to focus on culturally relevant pedagogy, and that ties pretty closely to our racial equity work. Where it really happens is in the classroom with our teachers. Our teachers need the support to analyze how they convey the knowledge and make sure that they have the same expectations for all of their students, no matter what their color. I think our strategic plan is guiding this work. I think our new superintendent is also leading this. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question starts with Ann Casey. You've likely been out talking to voters. As supporters, and because you understand the true need, what do you say to those who are unsure about the referendum? Why should they vote yes?
It's a lot of money. That is the truth. Why should you vote yes? I want you to make an informed decision about why you should vote yes. I want you to go to the district's website, and I want you to find the tax calculator, and I want you to put your home's value into the tax calculator and find out exactly how much the tax increase will be. I have talked to a lot of voters, and a lot of voters are worried about this big number. But when I ask them, have you looked at exactly how much this will cost, they might not know. And so make an informed decision. Know how much the tax increase is for your house. I put my house in. I have about the average size house in St. Louis Park, and so it came out at $12, which is the number that we've been saying, $12 a month. And I think that's a pretty doable investment for our schools, for our community, for my property value. There's a large percentage of our property values that are based on the quality of our schools. We know that. Our schools make our community. And it's important. And like I said before, it's part of our strategic plan. If we're going to reduce the achievement gap, if we're going to make sure that all learners are learning, we need these facilities. We need them to be the appropriate flexible spaces for our kids. So lifelong learning, great investment in our community, and make sure you're making a good decision based on the data that's available for the tax increase on your own home. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Tomback?
The reason why you should vote yes is because our students deserve it. It really is that simple. There's no air conditioning in a lot of our buildings. One of our third grade teachers at Susan Lindgren, she measured the thermometer in her room on that really hot day a couple weeks ago was 106 degrees in her classroom. My boys came home from the middle school bright red and still sweating after a 45-minute bus ride too because they were miserable all day. Our students cannot learn in the current environment. Our future students, it will be even worse. Some people don't know it costs $1 million a year just to maintain Central. You walk in that building on a normal day, the temperature variance in classroom to classroom is pretty significant. It is very hard for our educators and our staff to teach our students in that situation. And as more and more people are relying on our buildings from early childhood through our senior programs, we need these facilities to work, just like we need to maintain our houses, just like we need to maintain our cars. We need to maintain these buildings, and we need to do this for our students because the health of our entire community really does depend on it. Please vote yes.
Thank you. Karen Waters?
Thank you. It is a big ask, but it's a tremendous investment. And I would like people to think about the commitment we've always made to our schools. The state limits how much we get to spend every year on deferred maintenance. Every year we have to file a 10-year plan with the Minnesota Department of Education. The school district is the only elected body that always has to ask the voters, please, can we raise your taxes? The county imposes it upon you. The city imposes it upon you. The state and Fed certainly impose it upon you. So we're begging. All of our buildings are 50 years or older. We need to have the roofs not leak. We need to have the pipes work. We need to have ADA compliant bathrooms. We need to have safe and secure entrances. I am so sorry that we live in a community, and what just happened in Las Vegas is just astoundingly horrible. But we have to have secure entrances in all of our buildings, and right now, Peter Hobart is the least secure along with the middle school. So it's an investment, it's a big investment, but it's gonna pay off with your property tax value. Ours, I calculated it, it's $16 a month. It's worth it. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Bruce Cantor.
I guess the first question that I ask people back is, have you been to the schools? Have we seen the schools? Have we seen this day in which they are right now? Whether it's Central, or it's Peter Hobart, or it's Quilla, or Susan Lindgren, they're all in different states of beings. They all need some loving care from us. Second is, think about what the schools have done for you. Whether you have a child in the schools or not, think about the learning that you've had opportunities to go to. Maybe you got in swimming, maybe you took a fitness class. Maybe you got to experience a great lecture by going to a community education class. For our learners who are young, the ESFE, Art Rolnick, who was at the Fed of Minneapolis, really did the work, showing that early childhood education is a huge, huge advantage that we have in this state right now, and that it pays for itself more than pays for itself. On the other end, as adult learners, just that opportunity to go to places. What happens if that pool breaks and you can't have swing classes? What happens if the fitness center doesn't work anymore because the lights can't stay on because we didn't pass that referendum? What happens for our older learners here at Lennox Senior Center if we don't have the money to make sure that they're nurtured and that they continue lifelong learning? You want to prevent cognitive disability? We need to make sure every day you're learning something new, and every day you're interacting with others around you. That social network that we have. Our values we live is that strategic plan that we've created. It talks about community throughout the whole thing, the intrinsic value of human beings and all of us. This referendum is a way of putting our dollars where our mouth is. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next question starts with Mary Tomback. Do you think we do enough to support the mental health of our students?
No, I don't. I think we do need to be doing more. Because as I mentioned before, there are barriers to success that exist outside of the classrooms or in some cases inside of our students' heads. And we need to help them. We need to connect them to the services that they need so that they can walk in our buildings and be ready to learn. There are safety issues and risk factors for all of our students. Whenever we see a student who is committing suicide or who is being bullied or who is a bully, that student needs mental health services. And I don't think that we are doing enough. I think that we can have more staff, more professional staff in our buildings to assist. I think we can be making referrals to outside services who can make those connections and offer that support. I think, again, our students deserve that. And if our bottom line is that we want them to be able to learn, we need to help them be healthy. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen Waters?
Thank you very much. No, we don't do enough, and there's nobody in the state who does enough. It's not just a school problem, it's a community-wide problem. And our district has relied on grants to fill in the gaps. We were very blessed by Park Nicollet Foundation funding a grant at the middle school to offer Skype counseling sessions so that the kids didn't have to leave school to get the support they needed. Another cut that we did this spring is we used to have 4 elementary counselors supporting the social workers in each building. Now we're down to 1 for 4 buildings. It's just not even conceivable to me that the array of lessons that those school building counselors offered to our K-5 kids is possible with 1 person. In Minnesota, we have a 1 to 800 ratio between students and counselors. It's one of the worst ratios in the United States. So again, it's not just a local problem in St. Louis Park, it's a statewide problem related to funding and the formula. Do we need to do a better job with the resources we have? Yes, we do. Can we do more? We certainly need to do more because our students deserve it. And the students are helping themselves. At the high school, the Oriole team, they have a bird feeder program putting together backpacks of food for their classmates. Now, they don't know who the students are that they're helping, but they do help.
Thank you. Bruce Cantor?
Wow, what an insightful question, actually. I don't even know where to begin. I struggle with this question all day, every day, actually, when I see kids in my office. I struggle with as a parent. How am I going to explain to my kids what happened in Las Vegas? How do I explain to my kids what happened in Charlottesville? How do I explain to my kids what's happened around the world? Bombings. And that's kids who I think are well-adjusted kids. What about the kids who aren't well-adjusted? The kids who have struggles at home, kids who have struggles with academics. What are adults who now are adults who have some of our mental health issues? I don't even know where to even begin. It's not just funding. It's also having people who are mental health specialists. We don't have enough mental health specialists in our society right now. I don't even know where to even send people sometimes. But fortunately, in the state of Minnesota, we actually have a grant that allows me to call a child and adolescent psychiatrist or a psychiatrist to ask them about a patient. From a medication standpoint, what should I be using? They're on therapy, they're suicidal. Do they need to come in? What should I be giving medication? How do I give them the right amount of therapy? And in the schools, that is really the door into mental health services for most kids. The teacher sees them. The teacher's struggling. What do I do with a kid who looks depressed, looks anxious, looks out of sorts, looks like maybe they've been abused, maybe they have some trauma in their life? I mean, trauma in childhood is an incredible, I don't even know where to start. I see in my office all the time. I see it sometimes when I talk to parents. My kid's been through trauma. How do I take care of that? So I can send them a book, send them to therapy. But it's an incredibly insightful question for which I don't have a full answer for you. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Ann Casey.
When I was on my way here tonight, I confided in my son that I was nervous, and he said, imagine that you're speaking in Mr. Hansen's class, because he wants it to be he does a great job making it a safe space for everyone. What I would do, we don't serve our mental health, our students' mental health enough. That's absolutely true. We can't do it all. It's great that we have people like Dr. Cantor out there on the front lines. What we can do is that we can make sure that our teachers are informed about childhood trauma and about mental health, make sure they have professional development so that they can identify they are the ones who are literally on the front lines with our kids every single day in their classrooms so that they can make referrals. We do need more school counselors in our schools. I share with Karen, I can't believe we're down to 1 for 4 schools. The Sparks program that the school counselors did in our elementary schools was amazing, and the fact that they're not there, the fact that they're not getting FaceTime with teachers so that teachers maybe don't feel it's not as easy for teachers to make those referrals to the school counselor is shameful. And we also need to make sure that our policies, that we're holding ourselves accountable to our policies. We have an anti-bullying policy. Is it 100% effective? No. Do we need to make sure that we're holding ourselves accountable to these great policies that we have? Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question goes first to Karen Waters. How will you address the real or perceived ELL inequalities? And ELL is English language learners, for those who are not up on the school savvy school language thing, but the English language learners. So first to Karen Waters.
Thank you. That is a question I have cared a lot about for a very long time, starting out as a parent advocate. And part of it related to how does the state of Minnesota fund English language learner support. I am happy to say it has improved. Is there more that we can do? Yes, but some of the things that I have seen, which are improvements, are the Amity program, which used to be exclusively just for the immersion students. Now at the middle school, those Amity support people, they also help the English language learners who are working on improving their English skills, even though Spanish is their native language. From a community collaboration standpoint, from our strategic plan, we're reaching out to dual language parents to serve as volunteers in the schools to support children in their language development. So it's a multi approach that we have to do. We need more state funding. I do think that our curriculum and supports has improved a lot in the past 10 years, and I really do appreciate that we have loosened up the ability of those Amity people that we pay for through parent fundraising to support more of our students. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bruce Cantor.
I had the pleasure of being at Aquila last Friday, actually, and going to the ALL room, and just remarkable how great these kids' English have become over a very short period of time. I see that as a barrier, as I see not being able to read as a barrier. We as a community need to make sure that every person can communicate with each other in this community. To me, it's also a way to see how other cultures work, how other customs are done, how to create other ways of thinking about the world around us. I grew up in America, but someone who grew up in other parts of the world may have a different way of thinking about the world around us, different solutions to the problems at hand. So for me, ELL is critical that we just don't, that's a way to just integrating all of us. It's a quilt, our society, and we are each a panel on that quilt. We shine amongst ourselves, but we're stronger together. So I hope that we, as a country, as a state, as a community, can ensure that our EL learners learn English. And on the other hand, I hope that I can learn from EL learners about their cultures. Thank you.
Thank you. Ann Casey?
As a parent leader at Peter Hobart, I remember hearing that we had 37 different home languages at Peter Hobart, and I was blown away. I thought I probably could come up with 11 or 12, but I don't think I could come up with all 37. About 10%, 10 or 11% of our students district-wide qualify for EL services. These kids are brilliant. They are bilingual. They are getting a bilingual education, just like our immersion students are. And I don't want to underestimate them. They run the gamut of children who have special needs at below grade level and children who are gifted and talented. And we can absolutely celebrate that, and I think that, that we should. How do we improve their experience in our schools? We need to make sure that we're engaging with every kid's family and every student's community. In their language, in the language that their parents can understand. We can't get parents to get involved if they don't understand our language. And that would involve translation. It involves bringing students and families into our schools in affinity groups, so language with people with a common language, so that they can feel engaged and comfortable in our school. If you feel engaged and comfortable in school, it's a lot easier to learn. And finally, I would go back to our community education program has adult basic education, which includes English language classes for adults. And I would absolutely put that in the orbit of things that we need to support for our English language learners. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Mary Tomback.
I had the opportunity to speak with one of our retired ELL instructors at the middle school, and I learned a lot from talking to her, particularly about the difficult balance that has to be created between keeping LLL students in the ELL classrooms and teaching them their English enough and getting them integrated into the mainstream classroom so that they're continuing to learn there. It is tough balance to strike, and that balance has to be different for every student. And so that's where it comes down to building those relationships, to understanding what a student individually needs and what their family would benefit from as well. I think that we do need to do a better job in this district of recognizing that even though we have ELL learners, that doesn't mean their families are necessarily getting that same education in the English language. And so this need to translate some of our fundamental documents is important. A lot of us who have worked on committees and groups at schools know how hard it is to get some of our documents translated when they go home to families. With 37 different languages, that is a challenge in and of itself, but some of those other languages are spoken at the homes of many of our students, and I think that would be one step, is to show our respect, is by making sure that we have a good system in place to be able to speak to our families in the language that they understand.
Thank you. The last question now, before we have closing remarks, goes first to Bruce Cantor, and it is St. Louis Park seeing an increase in special needs? If yes, how would you address the issue?
I've seen an increased need in special needs, actually, as a practicing pediatrician in this community. Those needs run the gamut. They're not just learning disabilities, reading, math, writing. There are also some mental health disabilities, ADHD, oppositional defiant disorder, emotional behavioral disorder. In addition, I see we have also some physical disabilities. Our kids who are autistic, who need to be in a separate classroom. Our kids who are wheelchair bound. Our kids who are hard of hearing. Our kids who have visual impairment. All these kids need special needs. And the way that we do in our community is we use IEPs and visual education plans that I advocate for to help change the instruction of these children. or they may need what we call a 504 plan, which is really changing the environment in which they live. For example, for an IEP, you would maybe have a speech therapist if you have a speech delay. For a 504 plan, if you have ADHD, it may be change in where you sit, preferential seating, extra time for test taking, maybe extra time for homework. I've seen in my practice an increased need actually for special needs. I was not prepared when I came out of practice, when I came out of residency 18 years ago, for all the changes I've seen in terms of special needs. But it's critical that we support those kids. Therapy has very few side effects to it, but has incredible benefits to it. And I see it in my office every day. Kids who couldn't speak to me last year can speak in full sentences. Kids who couldn't see last year, who can see well enough to be able to write a little bit and understand and be active learners. We need to do a great job with our special education kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Ann Casey?
I think we've seen an increase in special education, not just in our district, but sort of in our state and nationwide. And we are mandated to serve them morally and legally. And our state funding for our legal obligation does not keep up with the needs in our district. So it takes a big chunk of our district budget to serve special education. That doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. It absolutely means we have to. What are our best practices in serving special education? Actually, they're not that different from our best practices in serving the needs of all students. We need to focus on growth. We need to serve students in special ed and in mainstream with cultural competency. We need our students to be in the classroom to learn with their classmates. The more we can get our teachers to keep all of the students in the classroom and have support in the classroom, kids need to be in the classroom to learn, the better. The more we can expand our differentiation out and understand the needs of special education students who are at both ends of our spectrum, the better. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Tomback?
Last spring, I sought out a volunteer opportunity at Mid-Minnesota Legal Aid, working specifically in the Disability Law Center for special education cases. I was doing research on racial disparities in special education and the discipline of those kids in special education and in the school as a whole. The numbers are increasing, but also the variety within classifications is increasing too. And there tends to be a problem. I learned a lot about IEPs when I was at Legal Aid, as you can imagine. And IEPs can be kind of formulaic, except our kids don't fit in those boxes, especially our special education kids. There's not a one-size-fits-all approach, even under the same diagnosis. We need additional staff in our schools to be facilitating, monitoring, and implementing those IEPs for our special ed students. And additionally, as Anne mentioned or hinted at, special ed laws are underfunded. This is a perfect example of an underfunded mandate in our state. And this is a problem that many of our districts are facing. And so the numbers are growing, the needs are growing, and we do have to figure out a way to address it. I do think that the referendum helps because it creates those flexible learning spaces, and that inherent flexibility that our classroom environment could be creating could create some flexibility for us to work with students' IEPs and keep them in the classroom. The research shows that keeping them in the classroom is most beneficial.
Thank you. And finally, Karen Waters.
Thank you very much. A long time ago, I was asked to serve on a early childhood special ed task force because we, at the time, had tiny little classes of individual groupings of kids with whatever their IEP need was. And it starts at birth. You know, if you have a child born with severe disabilities, you get services from the school district right at the beginning, and we send teachers to your home. But if your goal is to have kids be able to be mainstreamed, in preschool, we don't want to isolate. So we had a task force to bring people together and realize your child is going to be served in this different setting. In the state of Minnesota, special ed funding is grossly underfunded, and it's a huge mandate. So our cross-subsidy in St. Louis Park is $4.2 million a year. So about 15% of our kids qualify for services. That's about 25% of the budget right off the top. And we have to fill it in with our general fund dollars. So that means we have less money for the rest of our kids. But we have to do it. It's a mandate. When Myron Franz was in the park this summer, I asked him, hey, do you think you could consider getting some of the services that our special ed kids need that aren't related to learning on the Health and Human Services budget so that we would have a little more flexibility with our funding? He said, great idea. I never thought of it before. We'll see.
Thank you. So next we'll move to closing statements. And we'll have 2 minutes per person, and it will be in reverse order to the opening statements. So first Karen Waters, and then down the line. So we just heard from Karen Waters before, but now we'll hear from her again.
Thank you so much. Thanks to all of you. I'm really grateful for all of you who are here tonight. I'm grateful for the League for hosting this. I want you to know that I believe that my experiences as an active and highly engaged school board member, as well as my service to this district through DPAC, SEAC, the Strategic Planning Core Team. I served the Minnesota School Boards Association as a legislative advocate seeking more funding for public schools and better mandates on testing and other issues. I served the West Metro Education Program as a Joint Powers Board member to really focus on maximizing our racial equity professional development dollars. I've been a community volunteer. I really think that my experience brings wisdom and energy to the board, and I started something almost 4 years ago that I'd really like to see through in terms of the strategic plan and making sure that our new superintendent's transition is very smooth. I am a passionate advocate for the children in our community. I do think I have experience to help us focus on what will truly benefit all of our stakeholders, our students and families, our teachers and staff and community. Please vote for Karen Waters on November 7th.
Thank you. Mary Tomback.
I will echo that thanks to the League for having us here tonight for this really great conversation. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. For a long time now, I've actually been talking to people in our community. I've been hearing their stories. I've been hearing what we want for our kids. And I have been coming to understand that we here in St. Louis Park really take great pride in our schools. And we know that we are doing great work, but that we do still have a lot of work to do. For starters, we need to ensure that every single individual student is successful. We need big changes to eliminate that achievement gap. We need to offer really high quality programming for our gifted students. We need those opportunities in science and in art that every single student can access. And we need to meet every individual student exactly where they are and do everything we can to help them grow from there. I would also be committed to making sure that our students are safe and supported at school. No child should experience bullying. Our buildings need to be secure. We need fair and effective discipline policies so that we are improving student behavior to create positive learning environments in these classrooms. And we need good levels of mental health professionals, social workers, and school nurses so that they can partner with our teachers to create those positive relationships with our students and with their families. And to get all this done, we need community support. We are a children-first community that is passionate about our youth, and we need to harness that energy to support our educators in this really big job that we are asking them to do. Great communities and great schools go hand in hand, and so let us partner together so that we can give all of our students in St. Louis Park their best chance for success. If you have any additional questions for me or have anything you want to discuss, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, and I would be really honored to have your vote on November 7th.
Thank you. Ann Casey.
I'd also like to thank the League and all of the candidates. It's been a privilege to be here with you tonight. And thank you to the voters who are here and who are going to watch this on Park TV for the next month. This is a community that values civic engagement. And it's critically important not only that you get to know the candidates that are asking you to vote for them, but that we get to know you. And your concerns. The school board isn't just for people who have kids in the schools, it's for everybody, and we represent everyone in our community. And that is a responsibility that I take very seriously. I want you to know that as a board member, when I make decisions, I would consider these questions. Is this the best for everybody? Is this for all students? Is this to the benefit of all students? Does it fit with our mission? Have we heard from all the voices that are stakeholders in this decision? Is it fiscally responsible? Have we been transparent about our decision-making process? I appreciate the questions that you've asked tonight, and I would encourage you to reach out if you have more that we haven't answered. Last year, I voted early, and I took the day off of work on Election Day so that I could spend the day at Peter Hobart with the Kids Voting Program, sponsored by the League of Women Voters. Thank you. And I can't tell you what an amazing experience this was. The kids took their vote so seriously. They had done their homework. They took their time, and they did their civic duty with pride. Those kids are our future neighbors, our leaders, our citizens, our voters. And we owe each and every one of them the best education that we can give them. I'm committed to them because I'm committed to this community. Please join me in voting for Ann Casey on November 7th. Thank you.
And Bruce Cantor.
I do want to thank the League of Women Voters as well as my fellow candidates. It's fascinating to hear the breadth of knowledge that we have up here, as well as the questions that were asked from the audience. Were very insightful, actually. It made me think long and hard about what would I say about these things. When I look at our community, I see a community that is alive and is enriched. And what I also see, though, is that we have a few issues, whether it's special education or mental health, or how to close that achievement gap, or how to make sure we are lifelong learners from day one of life until the very last day. We can do it as a community. We need to live our values. And what I like best is that the school board has laid out a strategic objectives and a plan and core values, as well as delimiters. We won't refuse to try something again if that's the right thing to do. That's in our strategic plan now. We have a few issues, though, as I talked about before, and I'm hopeful that I can help be part of the solution, not part of the problem. I think being a good listener is allowing other people to talk and responding in kind, and being able to change your position based upon the information that people give to you. We need to be engaged not just with our K through 12 students, but with our early learning students, with our adult learners, with our senior learners, but we also be involved with our social workers that we have in our community. We need to be involved with the mental health workers we have in our community. We need to be involved with our teachers that we have in our community. We need to be a full community. And if you look at that strategic plan, we talk about in that the community as a whole is stronger than each individual by itself. So I hope that on November 7th, you'll do two things. One, you'll vote yes on the referendum, both on question 1 for the levy, and 2 on the referendum for the buildings. And 2, that you'll vote yes for me on November 7th, Bruce Cantor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all our candidates. Thank you, audience in person and audience on cable TV. Not only the live watchers, the ones watching live TV, but the ones watching the recorder. I hope you're all alive, and I hope you all vote November 7th. Thank you.
Thank you. Remember that absentee ballots are now available from the city, or you can request a ballot by mail from the city clerk administrator by calling 952-924-2503. The ballot must be received by the city no later than the day of the general election. And for more information on in-person absentee voting, visit the City of St. Louis Park website. The general election is November 7th. Polling places are listed on the City of St. Louis Park website. And thanks to all members of the League of St. Louis Park, and special thanks to Reg, Janet, and the city for assisting with the forum. Thank you. And there's coffee and treats out in the lobby area. Thank you for coming.